Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Punch, Kick, Choke, Chat. My name is Sean Benson, and I'm one of your hosts. And it's 8:30 p.m. my time, which, if you've been following along with my last couple of weeks, means that I'm back in the home time zone of our show. My road trip's over, and I'm back, and I'm super excited to be here at my desk in my study. And I'm super excited to start this conversation with Renshi Scott Taylor tonight. Renshi, I want to jump right into something we were talking about before the show started, which is tell us what's different about your brand of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu from the conventional type of BJJ. And even we were talking about wrist locks and different things that people might even assume that you do. What's the difference and why does it matter?
So the difference is we're Japanese-based martial arts. So we still do the standing joint locks, the kicks, the punches, but we focus 95% on the grappling side. As far as I know, we're the only Japanese style that focuses a lot on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're similar to BJJ. The way my instructor put it to me was that, he was here before BJJ was even heard of in Canada. Not saying that BJJ wasn't in Canada at that time, just nobody really heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Back then. Soccer France was doing this in the late 70s, early 80s. So he's been around for a long time. I don't know if Hanchi Legacy knows Daryl LaFrance. I think you might have crossed paths with him at some point.
The name's familiar, but I can't remember who it is.
Yeah, but that's basically the short of it. That's our style. So
Yeah.
I introduced to. I got interest in jiu-jitsu when I saw a little guy on the UFC choking everybody out, and I'm like, well, I got to go learn that. And I just happened to stumble across one of Soki LaFrance's students, started there, and that guy kind of quit and went on his own way, and I just kept going with Soki LaFrance.
Right on. And then when you see, the proliferation of BJJ and the sporting aspect, what do you think of that when it lacks the strikes, or when, let's say somebody wraps up a triangle and the other guy stands up but can't slam him? I mean, where do you go with the martial versus the sport of it all?
Well, I try to teach twofold when I teach. So I'll teach like, okay, if you really want to open somebody's guard, punch him in the balls, his legs are going to open, and then it's a lot easier to pass. And if you're fighting on the street, somebody puts you in a triangle choke, I have no qualms about lifting them up, slamming them on the ground.
Uh-huh.
Fight's going to end real quick.
Yeah, I just want to go around the horn on that. Sensei Suino, arguably you're responsible for two other people on this call doing jiu-jitsu. You introduced us to a ground style of grappling, but at the same time, you come from a Japanese jiu-jitsu background. So can you talk about that difference between the sportive and the classical, and, what we're talking about with the fighting versus competition?
Sure. I think 90% of what I know about grappling comes from judo, and the other 10% comes from grappling with people who know BJJ. So the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu that I study, Nihon Jiu-Jitsu, was created by Sato Shizuyo Sensei, and it's essentially a standing self-defense martial art. But he was also a high-level judo practitioner, so he was, good at judo throws, and he was good at judo groundwork. The other interesting thing, as Scott was talking, as Renshi Taylor was talking about, is that if you go back far enough in judo grappling, most of what you see in modern BJJ already existed, right? It just was kind of lost in translation for a long time.
That's true.
Not to say that the BJJ guys maybe haven't evolved it more, but it's not like it just turned up in the 1970s. It's been around a long time.
Right on. Let me throw this to you, Sensei Dauphin. You're newer at the BJJ, and did you have a transition where you're grappling and you're like, but I could just punch him in the head here, or why can't I just do this? Where the classical blended with the sport, or did you surrender out of the gate?
Oh, I don't know. I still think about that stuff, Sean. I've even said it to my coaches before, and they say, yeah, you're right. Right? Like when we're doing takedowns and stuff like that, I'm like, you're not going to arm drag me like that. I'm going to slam my fist into your head at light speed, or like kick you in the legs so freaking hard. But
just be friendly.
Yeah, they say, yeah, you're right. We know. Like they don't, right? Like at least at the BJJ club I train at, they have a lot of respect for other martial arts. They have a lot of respect for karate. They never talk badly about any martial arts, which I really appreciate when I go there, because I wouldn't stay there if they were. I like to call those people martial arts racists, right?
Right.
'Cause-
Yep.
Okay.
And then Sensei.
No, I just, when we go around the horn, Sean, I have a follow-up question for Renshi Taylor, if you don't mind.
Okay, great. I just want to throw it to you, Hanshi Legacy. Like, you don't do the jujitsu, but has anyone in any of your alleged street conflicts tried to take it to the ground with you? Because I know it hasn't happened, but did anyone try and do that with you?
No,
Never got that far.
no, I've never gotten that far. It's on the first move. When they attack me, I just finish it. And let's be realistic. They're street fighters. They don't really. Some of them, of course, do. But I was lucky in those instances that they just didn't know they were picking on a martial artist.
Right.
I wasn't about to tell them.
Find out.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not a jiu-jitsu or a judo guy. I apologize. So that's out of my realm. And I bow to all you guys to listen and learn from you guys.
Well, thanks, Hanshi, but not at all. That's really so much part of the conversation, I think, that you started, Sensei Watson, about you're talking about a striking beginning, and, some of those sport aspects ignore that part, and it may be to their peril if it does happen in the street. Sensei Dauphin?
Oh, I guess it's in a different direction, Sean. So I'm not sure if you wanted to answer your own question or if you.
Yeah, look, I've quoted this on the show and I absolutely agree with it. Renzo Gracie once posted on Instagram a Tyrannosaurus Rex and he said jiu-jitsu with strikes. And then he showed Barney and he said jiu-jitsu without strikes. I think that's right. Jiu-jitsu is gorgeous as a sport, but for a martial art, there's ways you can turtle out of stuff and play a turtle game. And that's just a brutal place to be if somebody's elbowing you down your spine or doing anything of that nature. So it's a beautiful game, but without strikes, it is just that, but a beautiful game, maybe my favorite game.
So I tell people when I grapple, it's like, look, I love grappling. I love rolling on the ground, but on the street, I don't want to be there. If jiu-jitsu will help me get out and get up and get away, that's what I want. And that's what I try to teach my guys too. So it's not all about, yeah, we're good on the ground, I can submit you, but I don't want to fight on glass or concrete or sand or whatever happened to be on. So, people seem to forget that jiu-jitsu is about getting up and getting away.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. I was having a conversation with one of my judo students just a week ago, and they were talking about. They asked me, why are we spending so much time on these jiu-jitsu techniques? These evolved jiu-jitsu interactions on the ground. And I said, listen, even if you don't have the time in a judo match to do this stuff, there's little arcs of all these techniques that are going to show up in your judo style grappling, right? After you throw somebody or you don't score a point, just because you're not doing that fully evolved long exchange that you might see in BJJ, it doesn't mean it's not educating you. And it actually, I think, educates a lot of the stand-up motions too.
Exactly.
What was your pivot, Sensei Dauphin?
Well, kind of one of the things I think about is that I don't think the arts like BJJ or Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, like as far as the movements of the arts or the training, it's all like everybody likes all of that. Like, I think when you find a controversy, it's often around the culture of BJJ and how a club operates when you go in. You'll see people laying on the ground with their head on their hand while the coach is teaching and things like that. And so my pivot was for Renshi Taylor, what's it like when you instruct a class or when you go to a class? Is it like that, or do you have formal bow-in? Like, I'm curious what it's like when you lead a class. How does it start? What are your etiquettes? How does it end?
No, we have a formal bow-in. I don't let anybody lay on the floor. Kids, adults, you sit or you kneel, but nobody lays on the floor. I don't like that myself. We're pretty structured. You know, for us, white belt, you wear a white gi. Blue belt, you can wear a blue gi or a white gi. Black belt, you can wear any color gi you want. So that's how we kind of structure it, and keeps it relatively the same, right? It's like wearing uniforms at school. Just keeps everybody at the same level type of idea, I guess. And then we don't always have a formal bow, but sometimes we do. Sometimes we just, when it's class ends, you can either stay for open mat, or you can go, or you can work on your curriculum, whatever you have to do. So that's it. Even if somebody comes in for a seminar, I tell my guys, don't you lay down on that floor. That's disrespectful. So yeah, so we're pretty well etiquette in the dojo.
All right.
See, it's one of the things I like about Cambridge VJJ is when you go there, they have it actually posted on the wall. Don't talk when the instructor's talking. Sit cross-legged or on your knees. Like they have and I'm like, this is awesome. This is Japanese dojo etiquette. Like right now, I love that. And I've always cringed when I see people laying on their back while the instructors, I just think it's totally undisciplined. And
I agree.
If you can't be disciplined about your posture or the way you step onto the floor, then how are you going to be disciplined when somebody's trying to choke you or trying to punch at your head? Like, how are you going to be disciplined to move in and slip that punch if you can't even be disciplined to sit properly and pay attention properly when the teacher's teaching?
Exactly. I agree with you. I like the discipline aspect and the etiquette very, very much. So I incorporate that a lot.
I initially liked the freedom in the BJJ, different color gis, you can have patches on, but only because I have the background in martial arts. Like if somebody didn't have a strict classical background, I feel like something would be missing. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I enjoyed a little of that when I was like, oh, okay. I'm not mad at this right now. I've come back around where I'm only interested in white gis again. It's just where I got to with it, you know, the novelty wore off. But and same with what we're talking about with that attitude. But I definitely enjoyed it for a sec. It was like, oh, I can do martial arts and not have to worry about being in line. It felt good for a sec. And then I instinctively was like, okay, I want to get back in line now.
One of the things I always was surprised about is since it's a martial art, is the posture where you sit on your butt on the floor and put your hands behind you. I don't understand how anybody who seriously claims to be teaching a martial art can let their students sit like that. And in fact, I've even seen that happen in a dojo where someone took out their elbow because someone fell on them. So not only is it theoretically a problem, but I've actually seen it be a problem in real life.
Well, let me go to you with this, Hanshi, and then we'll do our intros. But so, you know, when I started with you in 1993, strict lines still is. But then when we started working with Hanshi Sandoval, he talked more about just spreading out, don't worry about lines, which is arguably even more classical. So would you ever see a time where you think that the lines aren't important because the Okinawans might not have had it?
Yes, I usually when we do white crane or an Okinawan art, we line up to bow in, but then after that, they don't have to stand in straight lines. I tell them the only times birds stand in straight lines is on a fence or on a hydro wire. So when we do white crane, they just get to the best place they can see.
Yeah.
I have something I'd like to ask Renshi and Sensei Suino, because I don't know about this, and maybe we'll be informing other persons as well. Let's say you're doing judo. Are there a certain set of techniques that you have to do, or can you take, say, a jiu-jitsu technique and throw it into judo and do it? Will they know the difference? Will they allow it?
Renshi, you want to take this, or?
That's a good question.
So go ahead, and I'll follow up with you.
been a while since I competed. I've only competed a couple of times. I don't do it, but I think there's certain moves that they can do and see the difference. So I'm big on like neck cranks and wrist locks and heel hooks. So for some of my guys, they might pull that off in tournament. They're probably getting disqualified. I'm not sure about the throwing aspect of it. I know no slams, but I think pretty much every throw is allowed in jiu-jitsu tournaments. Sensei Suino?
Yeah, so if you're doing formal judo, there's the Gokyo no Waza, which is a list of techniques that the Kodokan has out. And so you have to demonstrate the pins that are in that, the pins, the chokes, and the arm bars that are in that. Stuff outside that isn't considered part of the formal canon of judo. And then if you're doing tournaments on the ground, you either hold somebody on their back for 30 seconds. Well, it's not 30 anymore. I think it's 20 seconds now to score a point. But you're only allowed to lock the elbow or choke in sport judo. You can't do a wrist lock. You can't do a heel hook, right? So there's a ton of stuff that's legal in BJJ tournaments. It's not legal in judo. So yeah, there's a rule set, right, that determines which ones you can do.
And in IBJJF, the most popular rule set, you can do all judo throws. You just can't do slams. So if it's a continuous throw, hip motion, all judo throws are allowed. But if I pick you up and slam on you or suplex you, then that won't be allowed. So it's a really small sliver that you can't do from the judo canon in a JITS tournament, or at least by that rule set.
All right, been so long since I looked at the rules, so.
well, let's bring this all together for an intro. I love it. You know, we had a chat last week where we talked about it after, and this already feels like that chat to me where we're just talking. And I feel like our show is really finding a groove with that, because you, my friends, are watching and listening to Punch, Kick, Choke, Chat, and we're not there yet, but we are creeping toward literally triple digits number of episodes, and we were talking about that over the last couple of days. So we won't get too specific right now, but you can expect something special for us to celebrate. And in many ways, we'll be celebrating you and your journey you're taking with us to keep this thing viable and vibrant. Like I said, my name's Sean Benson. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm here with the three other hosts: Sensei Randy Dauphin, Sensei Nicolas Suino, and Sensei Hanshi Gary Legacy. And I just road tripped to Los Angeles, and I drove home 3,000 miles in 3 days, and I love driving. It's not a big deal, but I was really tired last night. And I messaged my student, Alden Adair, who's a second-degree black belt, and I said, I won't make it into class tonight. And he goes, no problem, I got you. And the reason I'm mentioning this story is that I look at Sensei Suino, Sensei Dauphin, Hanshi Legacy, and I look at what they built. And I look at the clubs that have existed for, in Hanshi's case, over 50 years. And you can only say, I'm not going to make it in once in a blue moon if you want to build something. And so my intro is just how much respect I have for my teachers, for all the nights I guarantee they didn't want to show up and did. Sensei Dauphin?
Thanks, Ben. That's a nice intro. I'm going to introduce my good friend, Renshi Scott Taylor. He's become my good friend over the last, say, 4 or 5 years. He does a style of martial arts called Kumo Jiu-Jitsu. He's also the head instructor at Taylor Jiu-Jitsu, and he's up in the Shwa. He's up in Oshawa. He's a fourth Dan in that system, but he's also a black belt in Tae Kwon Do. And if you've seen any of his pictures lately, you know, I was like, oh, go Renshi Taylor, like up in the air, feet up, jumping above his ears, which is great. He's also trained with a lot of UFC people, had the opportunity to train with a lot of people like Joe Daddy Stevenson. Love that guy.
Nice.
Yeah. Gray Maynard, right? The bully. Brandon Vera, the truth, and a little known martial artist called George St. Pierre. He's trained with him. Like, you know, that guy that nobody really knows who he is. He's a certified level 3 senior instructor of Kumo Jiu-Jitsu. And he also teaches seminars all over the place. And that's I think that's where you and I first met, Renshi, is we were teaching in Godrich together at the same seminar.
Yes.
And I loved that seminar. I was so happy to be on the mat with you. It was outstanding. I learned so much that day. And so
You and me
listen,
both.
yeah, I was teaching the Ido and you're teaching Jiu-Jitsu. So if you don't know, Renshi Taylor's moniker is the Dirty Demon Wrist Locker. And if, you know, in BJJ, when they say keep your elbows in, I'm like, if you fight with Renshi Taylor, you need to cut your hands off. That's what you should probably do, right? He's also good friends with other friends, people we've had on, but you know, Shihan Sean DeJong and Godrich, as I mentioned, they're good friends. Also, Chris Henson, Sensei Henson, who we just had on recently, they're also good buddies. If you see, they're doing stuff together. He's been here to my dojo. Like I said, we've trained together. This is one of the things that I was thinking about Renshi Taylor that I wanted to say to everybody is super nice guy. You're going to see he's laid back, likes to joke, smiles often, but he's also one of those guys, you hear this saying, fuck around and find out. He's one of those guys, if you fuck around with him, you're going to find out. You're going to find out in a hurry, and you're going to find out like where at whatever range you want to find out, you're going to figure it out really fast, right? Or maybe when you wake up, you're going to find out. And I'm super happy to have Renshi Taylor on here today. I know we're gonna have a fun chat tonight. So thanks so much, brother, for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. This is my favorite podcast by far. You guys do such a great job that I always can't wait for the next episode. I mean,
Thank you.
I'm actually missing class tonight because you guys do it Thursday nights, but my right hand guy Nick is doing it for me. So I said I got a podcast to do. I won't be there. He's like, hey, go for it. So my students are in good hands with him.
That's awesome, Renshi. We're so glad you're here. And I just want to do a couple quick bits of housekeeping. For those of you watching on YouTube later, we're so happy you're here. So if you could just hit that subscribe and like button, we really appreciate it. Share it with your friends. If you're listening on those podcasts, same deal. You know, word of mouth is how we've been growing this so beautifully. But if you're with us tonight on Zoom, you get to be a part of this live history. You get to ask questions down in the chat button, which Robert's lit up for us right down there. So throw your questions. We'll ask them of our guests, and we're really looking forward to seeing what you want to know. But as you know, I love to ask, if you watch this, Renshi Taylor, what was it like growing up for you, and what brought you into your first dojo?
So I had a good childhood, you know, great loving parents. My mom passed away 2 years ago. My dad's still around. Was growing up, what got me into it was, you know, it was like classic story, being bullied, always the smallest guy. So found a great Tae Kwon Do instructor and saw these guys throwing kicks. I'm like, ooh, that looks fun. And that's what got me started. So my Tae Kwon Do instructor, Mr. C, high school teacher, was actually from Singapore, learned from was in the Singapore Army. So that's where he got his Tae Kwon Do training. He was a nice man, but he could be mean. Because his philosophy was somebody breaks your jaw, you kill him. It was like, okay. And when I did Tae Kwon Do, we didn't have gloves or headgear or shin pads. It was either you learned to block or you got hit. So you learn to keep your hands up pretty quick.
Sensei Dofe's definitely nodding, because that term that he loves to use is it's a self-correcting problem. Very quick. I actually, before we go too much further, there's a concept I want to crack open that I think we can enjoy talking about. And what your teacher said, if someone breaks your jaw, you kill him. So I want to know what everyone thinks about that. My brother and I used to talk about it. We called it the theory of ultimate violence, which is that if someone steps outside the lines, they don't get the recourse of, let's say, oh, now you get to step back. You've stepped out, so you've broken the law, let's say, by attacking someone. You don't get to decide how much you get attacked back. So what's your thought on that? What's your thought on what your teacher said, or the idea that if you push someone over, they might get up and stab you with a knife, even though that seems like an extreme response?
Well, I mean, that is extreme response, but it's not out of the reality of things, especially nowadays, right? Hear about stabbings all the time lately. Just goes to show you, you don't know who you're messing with all the time. I am very happy that I have done some stick and knife fighting with a good friend of mine. And the one rule is you're going to get stabbed or cut. Do not think you are not going to come out unscathed. So I hold the philosophy, and my jiu-jitsu instructor told me this, my Tae Kwon Do instructor is this: you do as much damage as possible. If you're going to the hospital, you make sure he's going to, but he's in much worse shape.
Hanshi Legacy, where do you go with that? You know, someone colors outside the lines. How far outside do you get to color back?
Again, I agree with it somewhat, but it depends on the circumstances. You know, if a woman picks up a baseball bat and comes after you, are you going to punch her in the neck and break her legs? So it depends on the situation. Even if she has a knife, a woman is as dangerous as a man. But for some reason, you know, in my opinion, that's why you're a martial artist, because you can make decisions on a dime. You have to decide, well, this is a life or death situation or not. You know, it's actually probably a police officer has to make that decision every day, right? And then when they go overboard, they get arrested. You know what I mean? So if there are 3 guys coming after me, one has a weapon, the other guy is 8'9", and the other guy's in front of me swinging, in a multiple self-defense thing, you have to, your first shot has to knock him out. Or it has to be so if a guy's got a knife, you can break his leg so he can't get after you while you're taking care of someone else. So fighting is a dirty game, and the dirtiest guy will win. So I agree with, but the smarter guy will beat the dirtier guy. It's always the smart guy who's going to win. So I agree with that in a sense. It depends on the circumstance. Right?
Yeah. Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Suino, I want to add like a thought. Like you got into this having grown up, been bullied and picked on. I'm imagining, and if I'm wrong, let me know. You might have been angry enough at a time that you're like, I want to kill those guys. You know, like, and then when you, let's say, find the ability to, where do you go with the idea of coloring outside the lines versus, well, now I could color back extremely. Do you?
I don't remember how angry I was. That's funny. I don't remember. I fought a lot as a kid, and I don't ever remember wanting to kill anybody. But I don't know if my memory is accurate. I think if somebody attacks you in an unlicensed setting in a street fight, that they have no moral right to expect gentle responses. Like once they open that can, then what they get is what they get, and they can shut up about it. Now, the law has a different opinion about that. Mm-hmm. In my state, you're allowed to use as much force as necessary to solve the problem, and not more. Now, I think that probably the worst people to decide whether you use the right amount of force is a jury, but that's how it goes. So you have to use measured force, and the only time you're allowed to use deadly force is if you have a reasonable belief that you're about to be experience great bodily harm or death. So you know, it should be simple. Someone attacks you, wide open. It's not simple after the fact.
Right. Sensei Dauphin?
Yeah, we all train to deal with violent situations. That's what we do. That's all of us. That's what we do. And I like to, you know, you've heard me say this, Benson, who's the most serious threat? Anybody who's willing to engage with you. That's a serious threat. If they're willing to, I don't care who they are. If they're willing to take a swing at you or do something, that's a serious threat. Nobody engages with somebody that they think is going to kick the shit out of them. They engage with somebody that they think they're going to be able to beat up. So you have to take that serious. And then, I don't know, just I can only speak for myself, right? Like I've contemplated things when I was younger in martial arts. Sensei Legacy said stuff to the whole class and me you should contemplate certain situations and what would cause you to react. And then that way, when it happens, you don't have to start thinking about it, or like, you just know, like, so as an example, you come in my window of my house at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're not invited, you're going to get met with a very harsh response. And honestly, I don't care if I go to jail. Like, I don't care in that situation. So there's a certain point for me in my mind. I'm not saying everybody's like this, but would jail be fun? No. But also it wouldn't be fun for somebody to come in the window of my house and do something to my wife or my kids. So then I'll accept those consequences. And sometimes that's what you do. You come up against somebody who just doesn't give a shit. Like, they'll say to you, hey, if you do this, I'm going to call the police and you're going to go to jail. And I'm going to go, I don't care. Do you want my cell phone? Call now. And call the ambulance too. That's
Yeah, I don't want to spend too long on this, but I do want to say, Sensei Suino, I think I was probably projected because I was definitely rageful at people who picked on me. And then when I found myself in a position where I could respond, I haven't. The number of times guys have picked on me in my 20s and beyond, where I'm just like, this doesn't matter. I'm gonna let this go. But that wasn't a physical thing. No one ever picked on me that way after a certain point, and I'm not mad at it. But definitely when I was younger,
I just want to quote Nick McLaren. I'm a nice person. Okay, I just want to say that out loud. I'm a nice person.
Right on. Let's get back to your Tae Kwon Do training. So what kept you there, Renshi Taylor? Like, what made you go, oh yeah, no, this is who I am now. This is what I'm doing.
Well, my instructor was a great man. I just liked his style of teaching, his philosophy. He was, he goes, it's great that you can kick head height. He goes, looks beautiful. He goes, don't ever do that on the street because they're going to take out your other leg. He goes, you want to kick him in the head? He goes, get him to their knees first and then kick him in the head. So I'm like, okay, that's a good point. Well taken. And so my Taekwondo instructor had a little bit of variety background too. He did some judo, and he did Shotokan karate, and he did some small circle jiu-jitsu. He was very good friends with Professor Wally J. So we had a mixture back then, even that I didn't really know. And so did a little bit of judo throws there, and he was just fun. I just liked his philosophy. You learn to block or you get hit. So I learned to take a punch and a kick.
So talk us through, how old you were in the next stages of your training as you led into more of a dedication to the jiu-jitsu, and also just, your experiences as a young man doing it.
So I was around 11 when I started Taekwondo. I did that right till I was about 20, 21. And then I found jiu-jitsu and just kind of never looked back.
How'd that get introduced to you? What was the like, oh crap, I'm drawn now?
Well, like it was short little guy in the UFC doing putting people to sleep. I'm like, well, that's cool. How do you tie people up the knots on the ground? And so I'm like, okay, I gotta find somebody that can teach me this. So I met a guy, his name was Paul Stark. He was training under my instructor. So I started out with him, and then him and my instructor, they had a little falling out. So I started with one of other Soki LaFrance's student, Lenny Richardson. He was teaching out of a Taekwondo club in Coburg, not mine, different Taekwondo club.
Mm-hmm.
So I started training with him, and then him and that Taekwondo instructor had a falling out. So I just started going to Bowmanville and Pickering to train with Soki LaFrance, and that's it. Just never looked back. He just had a way about him and teaching that I liked. And he was no bigger than me. So it was like, okay, a little guy can tie a big guy in the knots. I love it. And that's it. Just never looked back. Still now Soki LaFrance moved to Nova Scotia, still talk to him every once in a while. I'm actually going there in August, getting ready to go for my 5th. So looking forward to that. If you ever want to be put in a good Gesekatami, he has the best one I've ever been in. and you might as well just tap because you're not going anywhere.
Oh,
He just knows how to squeeze.
For anyone listening who doesn't know what you're referring to, what are you talking about with I'm 21 and I see a little guy wrapping up all the big guys?
So yeah, because a lot of people haven't seen the UFC.
And some of our listeners will be a little younger.
Yep, well, that's true. So it's just, little guy getting the big guy down, getting on top and controlling, and big guy can't get him off, even though he's trying to bench press him. And he just, every time you move, he just tightens up. And when he gets a hold of a limb, just like a boa constrictor, right? He's not letting go and he's ripping it off. So that's what I mean. And it's such a good feeling to know when you can control somebody bigger than you and just have that control and make them get out of breath. Which I know when I first started, I used to go lay on the bathroom floor because I was so exhausted. Just lay on the cold tile. I'm like, oh my God, I'm dying.
And was it UFC 1 for you, or was it a couple in conjunction? Like, was it an immediate lightning bolt the way some people have described, or?
It was actually, yes. So I searched out, had a few books that another friend of mine got, and we would just practice. And then we found an instructor and just went from there.
Right on. It's funny because I had a buddy who ran a video store in London. And so this is 1993 when the first UFC happened in November. And he gave me the tape like a month later. He goes, I think you'll like this. You're doing karate. And I remember watching it. And if you remember Gerard Gordeau, the Dutch Slovak guy, he actually did great, but he broke his foot kicking the guy in the mouth.
Right.
So I remember watching and going, okay, this jiu-jitsu is great, but the stand-up guy did great too. He did break his foot. That's too bad. So it's funny because a lot of people talk about the lightning bolt of Royce Gracie winning. I was like, that's awesome. But I also love, and Gordeau's like kind of a dick. Like if you know his story, he was dirty. But man, was he powerful and great with his punches and kicks. So ironically, he kind of kept me in the stand-up game. I was like, love it. Love what I'm doing. And kept me on the karate path, even though we watched the exact same tape and had the same response to the win.
Right. Yeah, that was it. I mean, I still practice my kicks and my punches. I've done some boxing with another good friend who happened. He just moved into town. He was looking for a place to train. He goes, you show me grappling, I'll show you how to box. I'm like, that's a good deal. So he got me better with my hands. He's also a naturopathic doctor, which he helped fix a few injuries I had, which was really great. Funny story I always tell people about my friend George, who's the naturopathic doctor. It's like when I go to see him, he'd be like, all right, explaining stuff to me and using really big words. And I'd be like, George, grade 12 education, buddy. Like, tone her down a bit.
You just brought up something awesome. There is a real link in the martial arts with a certain type of naturopathic, like a natural healing. I'm sure we've all enjoyed Western medicine, but talk about that link and talk about why it's important.
Well, I had a bad shoulder. I actually dislocated this one, put it back myself. Probably should have gone to the hospital. But I'm like, young and dumb, 20. I'm good. It moves. I'm good. Well, I couldn't get my hand off of my back to touch a wall behind me. So he would dig in there and break down all the scar tissue, acupuncture, put the electrodes on there and zap me. So it really helped, better than taking pills, which if I don't have to take a pill, I'm happy. We all know pills, if you take them over a long period of time, your body gets immune to it and they stop working, doesn't have the same effect. I find that naturopathic or chiropractor, whatever you go to, massage, way better. Helped me a lot. I haven't gone to see him for a while. I do have to go back in. I got some other things he needs to fix, but
You should have taped a nickel on there, Renshi. That's what Sensei did. He taped a nickel on his shoulder.
That was Japanese money. Yeah, no, I've had 3 shoulder separations, and the 2 worst ones both happened in Yokohama in a judo on the judo mat, and both times there was a Japanese bone doctor there. So they both times they reset my shoulder for me. So I'm sure that helped a lot with the healing process.
So yeah, why don't we will go around the horn on this question. So Sensei Suino, what's your take on, it's ironic that it's now considered non-traditional medicine to do non-Western medicine, but what's your take on non-Western medicine and its relationship to the martial arts?
Well, I guess I was exposed to that for the most part when I lived in Japan for 4 years, because that was most of the treatment that I got. You'd go to the doctor and he'd give you these powders, and they were apparently like originally created by the Japanese, and they were herbs or dried worms or whatever the hell they were, and they'd give you these powders instead of Western pills. I had lots of acupuncture when I was over there, including some amazing results, like almost instantaneous results. And as I said, I've had my shoulder reset twice by Japanese bone doctors. But those things came up together in Asian history, right? Like acupuncture, the meridians, herbal healing, all that stuff is thousands of years old in Asia, as are the martial arts. And I don't know what other people's experience has been, but my experience has always been that if you're in a group of a lot of martial artists, there are a lot of people that know something about it and a few people that know a lot about whatever you want to call it, alternative medicine.
Right on. Hanshi Legacy?
I've been fairly healthy in that. I really haven't delved into anything deep like that, except I know that, again, if you have to take pills, your body can become immune to it, and sometimes the cure is worse than the disease or the pain, if you know what I mean, addiction and other things. But I've had a fairly healthy life, thank goodness, and I haven't delved or worked a lot with drugs.
Now, before we go to Sensei Dauphin, and I'll chip in a little. In my first year, maybe my first month, I saw you hammer a katsu on the back of someone's ribs, and they just popped right back up as though they'd never been hit. So you want to talk about that at all?
Shiatsu, when you get hit in the solar plexus, and you can't breathe, or I just rubbed the muscles and stimulated them a bit so they could start moving. That was a woman who, she actually just froze and wouldn't move and couldn't breathe, just because she had never been hit. Somebody tapped her on the chin and she went and wouldn't breathe. So I just knelt her down and hit her in the back to start her breathing and rub the muscles so they could contract and expand. So that wasn't really heavy stuff, but that's what you saw there.
Yeah. Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Dauphin?
Yeah, well, Sensei Lacey's done other stuff like that too. Once I was in his custodial room and this teacher came like freaking out, knocking on his door and said like, Billy's got a rock stuck in his nose. We can't get it out. And Sensei Legacy pinches his nose and goes, breathe out of your nose super hard. And the kid starts pushing, and then he only lets go of the side with the rock in it, and it like hit the ground and like bounced up into the air. So he's a master of alternative medicine too. He make you breathe or get the rocks out of your nose.
We got to change the website now.
Yeah. So listen, Sean, I'm a big believer in it because I think I don't want to trash talk our like modern medicine, but it's mostly a crisis system, right? It's like for when you've done, you're on the way out, right? Or something is terrible happening to you, and then that's when you go. Whereas I find a lot of the alternative medicine is like, it's before or near the beginning or teaching you. So 2 examples I have with it are, one, my ex-wife, our kids were born, the first 2 by breech. Third one was born naturally. And Sammy was not turning in the womb, was not turning at all. And our midwife said, go to a acupuncturist. And believe it or not, the point to turn a child in your uterus is on the outside of your left baby toe. And I don't care if you believe me or not. She went, got acupuncture, came home that night and was like, I don't feel good. Sammy turned and was born like the next day, like 24 hours later, Sammy was born naturally, turned in the womb. And then I guess, building on what Renshi Taylor said, I had a really bad injury between 2002 and 2004. So 2002 is when I competed in Venezuela. In 2003, I remember I was stretching in the dojo. I was doing this leg swing thing and I hit the ground and had a major tear. And like, it was audible. Sensei Legacy was on the other side of the room and looked over at me and said, "What was that?" I said, "Something in my groin." And he said, "You take it easy right now." I went through all the physical therapy stuff and it sucked. Like, it just didn't work. The first kick I threw after they did it, they said, "You're good now. You can throw a kick." I threw a kick and I just started to cry. It hurt so bad. Then one of my black belts, she was dating a guy named Bruce, who's a big bodybuilder guy who knew a guy who did active release, which was a new thing then. I went to Niagara Falls, went into his place, and it was like, oh, that's the Buffalo Bills quarterback. That's Floris Griffiths Joyner. That's like all these people he had worked on. And he said, "I'm really afraid of you. Bruce told me that you could hurt me. I got to hurt you really bad to fix you." Which she had to strip scar tissue out, and it hurt. Like, it was like one of the most excruciating things ever. But after one treatment, I could kick again. And then I went back to him like 4 times. And after 4 times, I was just back to like as close to 100% as you could get. After doing I don't know, like 3 months of physical therapy that did nothing, right? Like,
Yep.
So I'm a big believer in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I just want to do a quick tag on that. Y'all know how I rebuilt my knee without doing any surgery, but actually one day I woke up after doing a bunch of throws. This is like 10 years ago, and I couldn't lift my shoulder. I couldn't lift a coffee cup. I couldn't lift a dime without this screaming. So I go to my osteopath, which is basically your skeletal alignment. And I tell her about it. My right shoulder's all ganked. She goes, "Okay, lie down on your right side." I said, no, it's my right shoulder. She goes, "I know." She worked on my lower left hip for about 10 minutes and goes, "Try that now." No issue ever since. And she goes, "You were banded. Our body works in X's and your lower left was grabbing across your shoulder." That's the kind of thing that no doctor would have worked on that lower left hip for 10 minutes. I will say this though. I do think the word holistic, a lot of people who only deal in non-traditional hippie medicine, they miss the holistic part of it. Because Western medicine could be great too. Holism should include all of what's available to us as an option, because some people only do Western, but a lot of people who like the non-traditional only do that. And it's like, yeah, sometimes you do need the operation or the surgery or the drug. I'm really glad we've never had that chat before, Renshi Taylor. So we ate into a bit of your story, but I think it's a really awesome conversation you stimulated. So bring us back to you as a young man. Are you competing? Are you thinking of teaching? What are you focused on in that sort of late 90s time period where you're digging into your jiu-jitsu, into your 2000s?
More teaching. Never really cared for competition. Don't get me wrong. I think competition's great. Everybody should compete at least once, just to say they did it or just to get that experience. I did it a couple times. I also couldn't train a lot like the younger guys. I had a young family, wife. So it was hard to train like some of the younger kids who were doing it like 6 days a week, 8 hours a day type of thing. I couldn't do that because, a lot of us have jobs. The job, got to work, got a family. Couldn't train quite as good as I have liked to. So I just focused more on the teaching aspect of it. And, I had some guys years ago that used to go to competitions. They loved it, always encouraged them, always went and coached. They were always on the podium. May not have got gold, but they were always on the podium. So I was pretty proud of that.
And then talk to us about how you started coaching or working at the very least with some UFC competitors. What sort of got you to that world? All
right, so I'll clarify. It's not really I got to train with them. George St. Pierre came to our dojo and did a seminar. So I guess, yes, I trained with him, but no, I didn't because he was teaching a seminar.
Right.
Super nice guy. Got to talk to him. When I found out he was coming, I was so excited. I come home that night. I was with my ex then. She's in the bathtub having a bath. I come bursting into the bathroom like, guess who's coming to the dojo? Guess who's coming? She's like, holy shit. She's like, who? I go, GSP's coming. GSP's coming. I said, I'm going.
And then she's like, bring him in the
"Fine."
bathroom. Bring him in the bathroom.
And the same with Gray Maynard, Brandon Vera, and Joe Stevenson. They all came at the same time. And that was like maybe a year after GSP was there.
Yep.
So I remember Joe Daddy Stevenson coming in, popping open a Red Bull, guzzling it down. He goes, we're all out all night drinking with GSP. He goes, we're still hungover. And then we got into it, learned some great stuff from them. They are super nice guys. Very proud that I got to meet and do a seminar with them. One of my friends that was at the seminar actually had a black eye, and Brandon Vera's walking around and goes, oh, who gave you the black eye? My friend points to me, goes, he did.
So let me ask you this question, and then I do want to go around the horn on it too. When you're working with these guys who are the best of the best, I mean, this is the best in the world. What would you describe, if you could, as the difference, or is there one? I mean, we're all lifetime martial artists. We're never saying no to this. We're on the mats every day. What do you feel or get or vibe or touch different with the 0.0001 percenters?
I don't think there's much of a difference. They were very dedicated to their art. So, I mean, it was great having them. And I don't think any of them had an attitude. They didn't have that tough guy attitude. All very nice, very humble. I mean, Joe Daddy Stevenson, he's about my height, but he's like that friggin' wide. Like, I was surprised how wide he was when I met him in person. I'm like, geez, I didn't think he was that wide. He's a truck. GSP, the way you see him on TV, exact same in person. So no difference there whatsoever. But that man is a workhorse, and he was drilling us pretty good that day. So he works hard. The other person I got to meet and do a seminar was Eddie Bravo, and super nice guy. He came to Kingston at the Hayabusa Academy. So went up there, did the seminar. And it was funny. The friend I went with, I'm like, wonder if he smoked a joint before he came. Sure enough, he walked in, shakes everybody's hands. I'm like, yep, you can smell it.
Of course he did.
And how did you enjoy that 10th planet work, given that you come from a more traditional side of the aisle?
It was great. Eddie Bravo, very well knowledgeable. It was a good mix. It was nice to see some of that stuff, and we can incorporate it into our style. I'm not quite as flexible as he is, but I took some stuff away from it for sure, like his twister, and I pulled that off a couple of times.
Yeah.
So,
right on. For the people who don't know listening, Eddie Bravo started very traditionally with Jean-Jacques Machado, who does super traditional jiu-jitsu, and then pivoted off and created a whole no-gi world, 10th planet, very flexible. He sort of invented the rubber guard, and tons of great leg locks in there and everything. Sensei Suino, who's the most impressive, like world level, hands-on competitor you've met? And was there anything about them where you're like, oh yeah, this is definitively different than the other, let's say, judoka or jiu-jitsu or Iaido people I know?
You talk specifically BJJ or?
No, I think I'm talking specifically combat arts, where these people have gone toe to toe. Like a GSP, we know he's said, never say die, 5 rounds, like that kind of thing.
So 2 very different stories. You guys have probably heard of Pat Miletich. He was an early a BJJ UFC guy. He's been to my Lansing dojo a few times, and he was one of the most regular human beings you'll ever meet. He was kind. He came in and I said, listen, most of these guys have families. They got to go to work tomorrow. And he trained with us and, rolled for 2 or 3 hours. He was good. Obviously, he wasn't going at UFC speed, but he was safe. So he was a regular guy that was just a little bit better than everybody. But I've met a couple of really famous, like previous generation Japanese judo guys, and a couple who are in the competition scene now, and they were freaking next level. Just hard to even explain how it feels to hold on to their gis. There's just a different level to them. Every move takes your balance. They're electric. They can move faster than you can conceive of. And they are seeing the big picture that you're not seeing. It's kind of hard to explain, but they're just operating on a fundamentally different wavelength. And but those are the guys that have been in the World Games. They're Olympians. They're Olympian alternates. That's the 1% of the 1%, and there's definitely something different about them.
Love that. And by the way, Pat Miletich, he was the first UFC welterweight champ ever. He when they added those weight categories. Hanshi Legacy, what about you? Who's a boxer, karate guy, like top level that you went, oh yeah, this is different about them, and what was it?
It's the person. Like the art's there for everybody. It's the person, either by way of just picking the right parents, by having the right abilities with his body, a good strong mind, good reactions, etc. So, for example, if we all know Wally Slokey. Back in our day, I used to stand there I had to take the drool off my karate gi just watching him. He was an incredible martial artist. And then there was the rest of us. Or you can look at Elvis, or you can look at Ali. It's them. They somehow, some of us are born without stuff, and and some of us are average, some of us are good, some of us are great. A human being, either by way of having the ability or having experiences to put you in, and then make the best use of it. So it's the individual, I would say. The art's there for everybody.
Thanks, Hanshi. Sensei Dauphin?
Well, I don't know. For me, it's their presence, Sean. Like they're, I had the opportunity to go to a seminar with Chuck Liddell. I went to a seminar with Rashad Evans. But people that stand out in my mind I remember walking into the Conklin boxing club in Detroit when I was a teenager, and Tommy Hitman Hearns is behind the counter, with his, and I mean, you just look at him and you're instantly intimidated by him, and he hasn't even done anything yet. He just focuses his eyes on you, and you're like, oh man, right. And again, quiet, but a nice person. All those people were nice persons. And then the one that stands out in my mind the most is just Jean-Yves Thériault, right? We've had the opportunity. That guy is I think he's the best striker on the planet, ever, hands and feet of all time. Ali's my favorite fighter of all time. Jean-Yves Thériault, if you let him kick, he would have beat him, I think. But, he's such a nice person now. And he said, when you talk to him, he says, oh, the Iceman's dead now, right? He had a different persona when he went in the ring compared to how he is. And I remember I was standing in the ring with him in his club, and he said, oh, Randy, you didn't never ask me to move around, or I'm like, I don't want to move around with you. He's he goes, well, I'm older, and I can't remember how he said it, but he said about, I couldn't go 3 minutes. I said, it wouldn't take you 3 minutes to get me out of here. You don't have to go 3 minutes. You get me out of here in 10 seconds. Right. They just carry themselves a different way. Those people they carry themselves. It's a been there, done that, not impressed by it type of a presence when you're around them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Sean, before you go on, the one thing I want to say is, with Chuck Liddell, Josh Hanley held a piece of paper, just piece of foolscap paper, and said, champ, would you hit this? And he looked over, he moved so fast and hit that piece of paper faster and harder than I've seen any human ever move or hit something. I said to Josh, every piece of paper on the face of the earth just died when he hit that piece of paper. Right? And that's a guy who's like 6'3" and 245 or 50 pounds. And he moved like as fast as a hummingbird. Like it's crazy.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, the two that I've met who are on my like top 10 list is Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture. And I just met them both around life in LA. And the genetics, you and I talked about this, Sensei Dolphin. It's a bit of what Hanshi said, picking your parents, like just the like forearm tie-ins and the arms and the neck. And I'm just like, even if these guys didn't know how to fight, I'd be worried about how this would go if they just got the bang on. And I know there's smaller guys who are equally awesome, but in my experience meeting those guys, I was like, there's just a head size here that's confusing. It's a thing. Renshi Taylor, it's time for your 10 questions.
This is my favorite part.
It's going to be my favorite part with you. I love this. What is the most effective move in your martial arts arsenal?
Wrist lock.
Well, we're going to say on the ground, wrist locks, arm bars, and gi chokes. I have 3. Standing, spinning hook kick, spinning back kick, and side kick.
Right on. Who is the most influential martial artist in your life?
So my life, so my Tae Kwon Do instructor and my jiu-jitsu instructor for sure. Tae Kwon Do instructor was always like, even if you stop training Tae Kwon Do, just keep training something. Just keep down that path. Train as many arts as you can get your hands on. Jiu-jitsu instructor was the same. Train as many styles as you can. He did a lot of different styles. He trained with some judo guys, sambo, drunken kung fu. So really neat to watch him mix in drunken kung fu with jiu-jitsu.
I bet.
For history's sake, could you give them give us their names?
Oh, I can't even think of his kung fu instructor's name.
No,
Or
your
his judo
sensei.
one. Oh, my sensei, Daryl LaFrance.
Okay.
Yeah. Been around for a long time.
Who do you think? Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
go. I don't want to interrupt if you're.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Great. Who do you think is the most influential martial artist of all time and why?
Well, that'd have to be Bruce Lee. You know, he's the one that kind of put it on the map. And, you know, you watch some of his old movies, Kung Fu and karate dojos just kind of exploded after that in the 70s and 80s. You get more into the 80s, and then you got Chuck Norris, who was like, I grew up on Chuck Norris. He was my favorite back in the days. Still watch his old movie. Just watched Missing Action the other day.
Yes. I think Missing in Action 2, the scene where he's upside down with the rat in the bag.
Yes.
And then the rat is going to eat everybody's face off and he stops moving and there's blood in the bag and they pull off the bag and he's eating the rat. Spoiler alert. That's one of the coolest scenes of my childhood martial arts movie.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Oh, he bit the rat. Yeah. What excites you most about the next 5 years of your training?
Oh, just keep training, keep learning, keeping my students well informed, just watching them, grow in the next 5 years. Hopefully a lot of them will stay in the next 5 years.
Mm.
We all know they get that certain blue belt level, they like to leave.
What excites you most about the next 5 years of your training? I just asked you that. You can tell I'm road tired still. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get there?
Well, I wrist lock women and children, so I'm not going to heaven.
Love it.
I wonder what Satan will say then. Well done, sir.
Yeah. No, if I go to heaven, I think God will say, your mom is over there. She's waiting for you.
Do you have a favorite film and television martial artist, even if they're not actually a martial artist?
Well, the Ree brothers. Best of the Best is one of my favorite movies. I could probably react that movie for everybody.
Chris
Uh,
Penn.
There's that one, and the raid, the first raid.
Mhm.
That hallway fight scene in the first raid. Oh, that was just brutal. Loved every minute of it.
Is there a martial artist, living or dead, in all of history who you'd want to train with the most?
Gene LaBelle.
Ooh.
Yeah. Nice
Go
answer.
on.
I wish I could have got to train with Gene LaBelle. I always wanted one of those patches that I got choked out by Gene LaBelle. Ever watch any of his old videos choking people out, and he throws the glass of water on the crotch and he's like, "Look what you did."
That's awesome. If everyone in the world could have the greatest benefit martial arts has given you, whether they train or not, what benefit would they be getting?
Be humble and be kind. Treat everybody how you want to be treated. Just be nice to everybody.
As
If
you
you fuck around, you're gonna find out.
If you fuck around. That's the flip side. You know, these last two come as a pair. If you've watched the show, what is your greatest achievement and what is your greatest regret?
So greatest achievement is, like a lot of people have said in the show, it's my kids, my family, my wife. She's a big supporter in my life. Couldn't have not done a lot of things without her. We've been together for 10 years, maybe 13. She'll probably kill me for that. Married for 8, but she is a very positive driving force in my life.
Greatest regret?
Greatest regret? I don't know if I have one. I wish I started judo when I was younger, because I actually had an uncle that taught judo in the Coburg area, and I never trained in it, but I wish I did.
We got some questions for you that came in. This is from Robert Schlumsky, one of our PKCC team. What is the least that a martial artist with a striking background should know about groundwork? What's the bare minimum?
Bare minimum, just get on top position. Top position, hold them down, and rain your strikes down on from the top.
So some escapes, I'm guessing, too, would have to be a part of that.
Yep, if they get flipped on the bottom, definitely, yeah, I gotta learn some escapes. Pretty easy, basic ones. Don't do this. Keep your hands up.
Yeah, right on. And we got another question as well from Zainab Tello. To progress effectively, do you think someone should only or mostly follow their sensei's lessons, or should they experiment with movements themselves and try new things consistently?
Nope, I think they should try new things consistently. Learn your basics first, or what your instructor has shown you first, and then try new things. My guys come in all the time, like, I watched this, or somebody showed me this, I want to try it out. All right, try it out. See how well it works. If you can get a little sliver of it, then keep working on it. You're only going to get better at it. That's how I see things. Like, my instructor was very good at, letting us try something. Sometimes he'd prove us wrong, like, that doesn't work.
I actually want to pop around the horn on this one. Hanshi Legacy, what do you think? I mean, we know what you think about finding a good teacher and do what they're saying, but where does the experimenting with the movements themselves and trying new things fit in with that?
Well, your sensei is showing you things, right? So it's like bunkai and nakata means more than one thing. So obviously, and I agree fully, that you need to experiment yourself. Everyone, I said this not too long ago, everyone who joins martial arts, if they're going to go anywhere, have to rediscover the martial art. Every single person. You can't just listen to what your sensei says. You have to experience it. It has to go through your mind, and you can become sort of one with it. You can't listen to someone else and really be successful.
Hanshi, am I wrong, or when you were first, was there a period where you were staying at a dojo and you'd have 8 hours a day there with nothing to do but what you'd learned?
Nothing to do. Yeah, when I started karate, I had moved out of a bad situation, and I didn't have a job at the time. So I went and I joined this club, and the sensei there noticed that I wasn't working, so he offered me a job. So I'd come in and clean the place up and worked really hard and trained all the time, amongst other things. And I used that time like for a year straight. After a year, he sent me to Benny Allen.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's spending all the time to discover yourself through the martial art.
Sensei Suino?
What's the question, Sean?
The question is, to progress effectively, what's the balance between following exactly what your teacher says, but also experimenting yourself and trying new things?
Well, it's a balance. It's probably a little bit different for everybody, and it's a little different in every dojo. We do a lot of work on classical or traditional material in my dojo, and that's half the battle. They've got to, my students have to focus on that. They've got to get their knee over their toe at the right time. The stance is this wide. You got to hold your arm like this. But then when it comes to applied martial arts, right, when you're doing sparring in karate, randori and judo, when you're rolling, that's when you have an opportunity to be creative. And I want my students to go out and find new stuff and forge their own path in that. So, but my whole life has been a balance of those two, following the classical template as well as trying to be creative in the applied aspects.
And Sensei Dauphin?
I think if you don't experiment, you're going to be a cardboard cutout of a martial artist. Personally, I really like what Hanshi Burkowski had to say about that. The progression, you're going to go through it if you stay in it and you have a good teacher. The shuriha, where I think in the beginning, if we're talking about this, I don't think you should experiment too much. I think you should just be quiet and listen and do what you're told to do and perfect those movements. But then after 10 years or so, you'll know how to do it. And then you can start talking about why do I do it? Why? And when you get into the why, that's where a lot of the experimentation starts to come in, because, you can't do a certain Renshi Taylor will tell you, like, somebody who's flexible, the wrist lock is going to be subtly different than somebody who's super stiff and not flexible. Right. And unless you experiment with whatever the particular technique is, then I don't know what it is. Like reverse punch to the body of somebody who's 6'8" and somebody who's 5'1" is like different, right? Mm-hmm. Ezekiel choke for somebody who's got a neck like that big, or somebody who's got like a little tiny scrawny neck is going to be different when you do it. So, and if you don't experiment and train with different people, then, but I think in the beginning, you shouldn't experiment too much. I think you should just figure out your art and train that art and get good at that. Don't ask too much why or how, right? Just ask how, not too much why, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to say real quick to the person who asked, Saint Abtello, I needed to not experiment much. Everything in my life was an experiment. And for me, the fact that there was this thing that I just had to do what my senseis told me was actually the freedom. It took me a long time before I looked at any other arts or cared, because I still didn't feel like I was at the center of the one I was doing. And so in my case, it was more important to just do what my teacher told me, because I was really good at not doing what teachers told me in every other aspect of my life and rejecting it. But with karate, I loved it so much. So it wasn't even as much about how much I learned. It's more like I learned how to learn in karate. I learned how to go, do it this and do it this way, because that's the right way, and don't make up the answer. So for me, it was really important not to experiment too much and not to try new things too much, to just go, okay, I'm not totally sure what my teacher means, so I'm going to keep trying to find what that is. Renshi Taylor, you're smiling at that one.
Yeah, I agree with Sensei Dauphin. Learn your basics, maybe after 5 or 10 years, then start trying to experiment. Because I've had people come in who are like, yep, I do grappling. I'm like, where'd you learn? Oh, YouTube. All right, let's roll. I'm gonna show you what's wrong. And roll them, they get humbled. And then I'm like, come here, watch YouTube later.
Right.
And like some of my wrist lock game and some of my other parts of my jiu-jitsu game was like, I'm like rolling around. I'm like, wonder if this will work. And then put it on. They're like, yep, tap. I'm like, okay. I used to have one guy I roll with. I'm like, I wonder. He goes, when you say that, never turns out good for me.
So let's talk about something that, 10 years, 15 years ago, leg lockers were considered a little grimy. And then now it's become the most mainstream way to practice jiu-jitsu. What is the thing about wrist locks that makes it such a dirty, like, why is the joke about wrist lock and white belts, whereas you can do every other thing to them?
I think they just think it's cheap and dirty, just like the leg locks were.
Right.
But I'm along the lines, well, why ignore, like Pete the Greek says, why ignore 0.5% of the body? If it's there and it works, well, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Right. I don't kind of hold back. I was even leg lock and white belts when I was learning leg locks and doing that. My philosophy on that is you learn them then, you're going to know how to defend against them later. Right. So I have no issues teaching anybody anything. Now, that being said, yes, I'll put a leg lock on a white belt, but I'll hold it if it's a heel hook and just look at him and go, okay, if you turn this way, this is what's going to happen. It's not going to be a very pretty noise and you're going to be out for 6 months. So tap, and later on, I'll show you how to get out of it. So I'm always careful. Like I can slap it on fast, but then I can stop because I have the sensitivity to know when it's tight, right? And then I can look at him and say, okay, choice is yours if you want to get out or tap.
Yep.
Now, some of them will spin out and get out. I'll let go because I don't want to break their leg. I want them to come back.
And then do you think wrist locks pose the same danger? Or do you think more that it's just considered a little like low hanging fruit, cheapish? Because they're not that easy to get all the time. I mean, it's a real game.
It is. I think it's just low fruit hanging, cheap, dirty, but they work and they come on fast. Certain ones, can be a little more dangerous than others. But most of my guys, they're pretty good at tapping. Most of my guys don't like touching me now because they're like, bad things are going to happen. But yeah, it's just cheap and dirty. You just got to be careful how hard you push.
Right. Talk to us about your seminars.
So I have one April the 29th in Kingston. I think it's the dojo is called Kiatsu Dojo. Jamie Rickert is the owner of it. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. So I think they're looking at some wrist locks and some other stuff to be done.
Great. By the way, just so you know, Robert just threw up to everybody the Facebook link in the chat button. So if you are interested in going to that seminar and supporting one of our guests and one of our friends of the show now, you can do that and find that. So that's awesome.
I'm going to do another shameless plug here. I do have wrist lock instructionals that are out. If anybody wants details on that, they can DM me. They can find me on Facebook, Instagram.
And the standing wrist lock game, is that something that descended down through Wally J for you? Or is that something that, because that was obviously a big part of his small circle jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it was through Tae Kwon Do, and my instructor, my jiu-jitsu instructor, Dale France, has done some too. So we did it all, standing joint locks on the ground. I like them. I like them just as much standing as I do on the ground. So
right. That's awesome. And again, Robert just put up the Instagram Dirty Demon Wrist Locker if y'all want to peg on there, and we can follow each other and support each other. And what about a Honchitarians event in on the East Coast?
Is that the one? That's not the one in May, is it? I wish I could make it, but I can't. I unfortunately have to work that weekend, and I already know I can't get it off, or else I would be there.
Okay, Rats, I think we thought you were going to be there, and that's why I teed you up on that one. So,
I am going to be at the Capital Conquest November though. So hopefully he'll let me teach at that one. I asked him, he said, contact me in the summer. So we'll see what happens.
Nice
Just
shirt.
once.
Nice shirt too, by the way.
Thank you. Your event. That was a good time. I hope you do another one.
The only reason why we're not doing it this year, Renshi, is just because it conflicts with the event in Levy. So
Yes,
next
you told me
year
that before, yeah.
Yeah, next year we'll be back in May, and we'll have a tatami for you to go teach something.
Sweet, I would love to.
Yeah.
I have one story I'd like to share. So we used to have a guy come in who was 475 pounds. And everybody was like, how do you fight him? I go, I don't. I'm not that stupid. I let everybody else do it.
That's what I mean. The smart guy wins.
Everybody's like, well, how would you fight him on the street? I'd run because I can outrun him.
I'd say with my car or with jump off my motorcycle and launch it at him or something like that.
I was just watching Mirko Krokop fight Bob Sapp.
Go.
I mean, and he hits him so fast and hard. And my fiance is like, why is he on the ground grinning like that? I'm like, he's not grinning. He got hit so hard, Bob Sapp did, that he doesn't know what's going on right now. Like, he just got stunned, and it's just like how he landed that perfect shot, because big Bob Sapp, you did not want him to get a hold of you. But he didn't have much of a chin, did he?
No. No, I think Krokop broke his orbital bone in that fight.
Ooh. It was unreal how fast and hard he hit him.
Hey, Sean, I have a question for Renshi Taylor and probably Sensei Suino. It would be for both of them. What do you think the barrier is? In karate, the barrier for people coming in is they don't want to get punched or kicked, right? It's something that it hurts. They're afraid of it. What do you think the barrier is in grappling that, people come in with what anxiety when they're coming into a grappling situation as an instructor? So, Renshi Taylor, let's start with you, and then we'll ask Sensei Suino.
I think a lot of it has to do with that claustrophobic feeling. Somebody on top of you, small space. A lot of people just have a hard time with somebody being in that close a personal space with them. It does take a little bit of a special person to, hug another human being that close, you could say. My mom, and I, hope this doesn't get anybody in trouble, but my mom used to be like, when I would talk to her on the phone, I'm on Monday class, she'd be like, are you going for a gay day? And she'd be like, because I roll around with a bunch of sweaty men. And I'd be like, yes, Mom, I am.
Yes, Mom, I am. What about you, Sensei Suino? What do you think the barrier is?
Well, I will tell you, I've heard from a number of women, of course, that last thing they want to do is roll around with a bunch of sweaty men. But the ones who overcome that fear become rock stars on the mat. So, that's great. The other stupid thing I've heard is people are, people who say, "Oh well, if I fight somebody, I'm just gonna strike with them." So fair enough, right? But I think that's a weak excuse for not grappling. There's so much cool stuff to learn in grappling that I don't think that's, if striking is your thing, you stick with it. But that's first another set of reasons. I don't know. People just don't want to work hard, Sean. Right? They don't want to work hard. They don't want to get scraped and bruised. People just don't like that stuff.
Yeah, well, I've told people too, like, I'll just strike with it. Well, you're going to have a hard time hitting me when I'm on your back and you're going through the air, landing on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Also, too, we've talked about this even with the Ido Sensei, Suino, but also you can fake spar, right? Like you can move around in a way where you're not touching each other and believe you're moving in a way that means something, but it's pretty hard to fake grapple. Like it's pretty hard to fake that did or didn't choke you. And I do think that's one of the barriers, is that there's some people who have never really sparred, but they think they have, or they can pretend they have. But as soon as you're on the ground and somebody's just going wham, you kind of can't fake it. Sensei Dauphin, were you to chip in on something there?
I just was thinking, like, you know, in seminars, I know striking seminar, people are really, they don't like their face being touched, right? Like when you're doing, like, you know, you put your hand on somebody's face, or you tell two people to go out and it's time to stiff arm people in the face. They don't like that. They just feel uncomfortable with it. And I mean, I went to grappling really late after being seasoned in martial arts and just understanding, but I always theorized that people would not like literally having to open your legs and wrap your legs around somebody, especially a lady wouldn't want to wrap their legs around somebody or have somebody like digging their hands into their legs to sweep their legs off or pass guard, right? I could be wrong about that, but because I don't teach grappling, but I just wanted to hear the answer to hear if that was the thing, right? Those are pretty intimate areas sometimes, right?
Yeah, and like Sensei Suno said, like women have, I think women have a harder time than a lot of men do. But when a woman asks me that question, like, you know, I don't want to be comfortable, I'm like, well, you got to think who's going to be attacking you and where you're going to end up. So try to put it in that perspective to them. Some go, oh yeah, I see your point. Others like, still, I don't want to hurt anybody. Well, then you're going to get hurt. Sorry.
You know how we do this at the end. We like to go around the horn and we give our thoughts about our time with you. This has flown by, Renshi. This just feels like we're sitting in a coffee shop and this has flown by. Hanshy Legacy, what do you want to say about our time with Renshi Taylor?
It was a great time. It was one of our better discussions. I learned a lot of things from your discussion because I am not a grappler. A couple of things that you said struck home with me. And thanks a lot for coming on our day. Maybe we'll see you again sometime.
Well, thank for having me. I have a story for you, Hanshy Legacy, that when we met at Sensei DeRouche's Yellow Brick Road thing at Brad Jones's dojo,
Yes.
one of my students that was there with me is like, who's the older gentleman there? I go, well, that's the guy you don't fuck with. I go, because if he hits you, you're gonna feel that. I go, look at him. I go, he's been around for a long time.
Thanks. I'm a bit embarrassed. Thanks.
Sensei Suino.
Man, I got so many good quotes from tonight. Renshi Taylor, I think the first time you and I met was at the Kitchener event last May.
Yes.
And Randy was kind enough to ask me to teach some judo. One of our sessions was groundwork, and one of the things I remember is just how, you know, you emptied your cup. You came and you let me teach. You did what I asked people to do. Obviously, you're very, very good at grappling, but that's something I really respect in people who are great martial artists. Is good at what they do, but they can also empty their cup, support an organization, support an event, learn from that, hopefully. And I'm looking forward to being able to flip the roles at some point and take some instruction from you as well.
Absolutely. I got to get my passport renewed so I can come down and visit.
Come on, man. We'll have you down 100%. And then just 3 quotes. I know Randy likes to go through the whole list, but I want to say them first. Number 1, before this show, I wrist lock a guy with my face. Number 2, if I wrist lock women and children, so I'm not going to heaven. And number 3, that's the guy you don't fuck with. Those are great quotes. Thanks for coming on, man. I can't wait to see you soon.
You're welcome.
Sensei Dauphin.
Yeah, I honestly, right, I like just the reverence with you. It's really clear how much you respect your Tae Kwon Do teacher and your Jiu-Jitsu teacher. Like, you mention their names with reverence and respect all the time. I appreciate that. That resonates with me. Bruce Lee, that's the number one answer. I think that's the number one answer when people ask that. that you just want to keep training. And I also like that you said that you want to keep your students well informed and you want to watch them grow. I think all the instructors, we all really appreciate seeing our students grow and change. And that's nice to hear. Again, what Sensei Suno said, when you wrist lock women and children, so you're not going to heaven. But Christine texted me while we were talking and said that she really liked your answer that God would say your mom is over there. Right. I'd really like to see my mom in heaven too. So that resonates with me as well. And I know Christine would like to see her dad. That's why it follows. Best of the best, man. Like, that movie's outstanding. When you said it, I was like, we need to get together in the dojo and watch Best of the Best, a whole bunch of us.
Yeah.
When Eric Roberts sidekicked that guy through that window in that bar fight, that's in my mind. I was like, I just want to sidekick somebody like that once in my life, in real life.
I was the same way.
Right. So, I think it's, man, I never thought about it, but I have so much respect for Judo Gene LaBelle. Like, we really wanted to get him on this show. Like, that was one of our our goats to be able to get on here. And if I could get choked out by Judo Gene, I would want to get choked out by him too. Anybody who makes Steven Seagal piss his pants, I want to try. I like that you said be humble and be kind, and I know that that's genuine because you are always a humble person and you're always very kind. And the last thing I do want to say is, if you're worried about going to the seminar for any of those barriers that we were talking about, I can promise you that Renshi Taylor's approach it's a very humble and kind approach, but also full of a lot of knowledge. Like, I really enjoyed doing grappling with him. And I've been around a lot of great instructors, and he's one of the great ones that I've been around. So I would encourage you to go check out his seminar. And thanks so much, man, for coming on. I know I wanted to say, with a lot of people were like, oh, I can't wait. I wish I could train with you. I know I'm going to train with you again soon. So that's not a wish, right? So thank you, man. Thanks so much.
Oh, appreciate it. I'm like I said, this is one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm catching up on a lot of episodes. I missed the beginning. Like, I just watched Sensei Suino's the other day on YouTube. Hanchi Legacies is next, so I'm catching up on ones I have missed. So, but yeah, great podcast. You guys do a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renshi. So I just really loved our time chatting tonight. I don't want to reiterate the quotes, but the best of the best, the Chuck Norris, like, forget it. Like, we go back to that same era, and it's a beautiful thing to connect on the energetic ideas, but also the grappling ideas. But I actually want to throw my time I would usually use back to you and say, for our listening audience, you might be the gi champion. How many gis do you own and why?
I own around 55. Why? Don't really know. I think it's just because I just like them. I probably have more gis than I do actual clothes. Some I bought, some were given to me. Facebook Marketplace is not a very good place for me to be on.
You got any favorites? You got any highlights?
I do have some favorites. One of them being Rise. Calvin Chung is the owner of Rise and martial arts himself, and it's his gi company. And what he does with some money left over at the end, he puts on women's free self-defense seminars. So he supports me, I support him. And then there's a company that has fusion fight gears. They have cool insides. I'll grab one just to show you some of the insides of some of these gis.
Let's geek out.
Now we can see his chair. Renshi Taylor sitting in a lawn chair. I love it.
Ultra chill.
So this is one I just got.
Oh my God.
Ninja Turtles.
Oh, yes.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah. Fusion Fight Gear is the company. I have like 3 or 4 of theirs. I got a Bloodsport one. The Killing Joke, which is from the Joker.
I have that comic book over on my table right over there.
So yeah, I just love them.
That's awesome.
My wife thinks I have a little bit of a fetish, maybe.
Yeah.
I tell her there could be worse things I could be into, so.
Right. That's awesome. Is there, the last word is yours. Anything you want to say other than your appreciation of the show, which we appreciate?
Just everybody out there listening, you know, just if you train, keep training, try not to lose your path, and just be humble and kind, and treat everybody with respect.
Right on. Sensei Dauphin, tell us what's coming up before I do some thanks.
Got Chris Hordecki coming up, and then we're gonna do a host chat, and then we're gonna be at episode 100 coming up really soon. And we're not talking about that yet, but we're gonna have some other high-profile guests on for that show, and that's what's coming up. Yeah.
Awesome, Sensei. Thanks so much. I'm so excited to be going toward that milestone. It'll just be another show, but it won't just be another show. I want to thank Mike Russell, Andre Sedeshev, Justin Shea, Dan Holland III, Robert Schlumsky, Jesse Villay-Vital, Alden Adair, and our new friends, Sydney Dauphin and Josh Kitchens, who are helping run this show from behind the scenes. It does not exist without them, and we're so grateful. Thank you for watching, everybody. We never take for granted that you're taking this ride with us. Stay safe, and we'll see you in a week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Senseis.
Good night.